I really feel like when we put on the eyes of God to look at other people and to see other people, that is where our compassion is coming from.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonen, faith columnist and features writer for the Forum, author, and speaker. In my childhood in the 1970s and 80s, TV commercials were very memorable. One went like this: "How do you spell relief? ROLAIDS. The intent, of course, was to get consumers to connect Rolaids, an over-the-counter edible anti-acid tablet, with the word relief, so that whenever indigestion would kick in, the Rolaids would roll out. It was this commercial that provided inspiration for my question of the day: how do you spell compassion? My guest, Camille Harvey, would know the reference, as well as something about compassion. I know this because I've known Camille my whole life. She's my only sister, my only sibling, and my almost Irish twin at just 17 months my senior. Despite the usual antics and foibles of childhood siblinghood, I can say that above all, I've mostly observed a deep compassion toward others in my one and only sister. It seems to be a deep part of her essence, and I think compassion, which seems in short supply these days, is a word and action worth diving into. Along with being a great older sister, Camille's compassionate heart led her to becoming a teacher, following partly in our parents' footsteps. When a guidance counselor in high school, noting her high SAT scores, recommended she pursue something more academically challenging, Camille resisted, choosing instead a path working with children, a career known for its low pay and hard work over a more lucrative existence. Her compassion toward others ultimately brought her to her current venture, Bluebird Companion Care, whereby she brings her big, compassionate heart into the homes of the elderly and others who just need a little help to make life more doable. In this episode, I'll share a few anecdotes of how this compassion was made manifest in my life with Camille through the years, as well as try to get at the source of this compassion. Without further delay, I introduce you to my dear sister, Camille. Well, welcome, Camille, to Matters of Soul Importance. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
I remember when we used to sing together, our voices we were told very, very similar. So I was thinking this could be interesting. I mean, we don't have the same voice, but it might sound a little bit like I'm talking to myself in some ways.
I was actually thinking about that, but I feel like our speaking voices are a little different. So I think it might be okay.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, though. I mean, siblings do have the same resonance, as we found when we were singing years ago and decided to give it a go to sing together, which was another beautiful thing. But, I just, it's so fun to have you on my podcast. I know you were a little reluctant to join me because you're not out there as much as I am. A lot of your work is kind of behind the scenes, but at the same time, you have been a teacher, you're a musician, so you have some experience with sharing yourself and putting yourself out there, but it just takes the right circumstance. So I appreciate you giving this a chance because as I was getting ready for this podcast, my family were kind of the first hearers and just giving me feedback. So you're among them. So I just appreciate that. And I just, this kind of reminds me of our childhood. There's so many memories, but we used to, in the summer, like we were bored. We lived in a little town. There was nothing to do in Northeast Montana. Pretty desolate, really. I mean, I don't think I realized at the time how removed we were from everything, but we didn't have computers and all the things. And really, I'm grateful for that. We really used our minds and our imaginations and our creativity. I think our dad kind of helped us, develop our imaginations. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, very much.
Yeah, all the stories that he told and some scary stories about the dinosaurs back in his day too. So, and
but all the stories about us, he had the stories about Roxette and Camoyle. They were stories about ourselves.
I know. And years later, when I was sharing, about writing with kids, I was able to see a lot of times we don't realize these gifts until we look back. And I realized that Dad put us into stories. He had us as the main characters, and
Right.
and so we were happy to hear about ourselves in the stories as little kids, and hear about our antics as told from our dad in a fictionalized. So there's just a lot of really cool things, I think, when you look back and realize how you developed into a person, and what played a part in that. I know one of the things too, we did a lot of play acting, or I don't know. Again, we were just using our imagination. And I just remember a lot of times, like if we were playing school, you would be the teacher and I would be the student. I think I liked acting because I was in all these different roles. I had to be many students.
Right.
And then we played church and you were the pastor and I was the congregants. I would be in these, I'd have to change my voice depending on which one who was being called on. So we had some good times, and looking back, it's a joy to just, as much as I've loved having a big family, there's something special about just having one sibling, and because it's kind of an intimate relationship in that way. Like we didn't have to share with anyone else, but we did have to share with each other. So I just want to, I guess, start, Camille, with you sharing a little bit about what drives you in your life right now. You're just a little ahead of me. We're only 17 months apart. You're having a birthday soon, which will be past by the time this records, or by the time it airs. But tell me a little bit about where you're at age 57, 58.
Well, I'm in a good place family-wise. My husband and I have grown kids and 2 young grandchildren, so that's an exciting place to be in life. I have always loved music, as you do as well, but that plays a part in just how I process things, or how the Lord speaks to me through music, and I'm able to share that in my church still. I guess I love the springtime, probably partly because it's my birthday season, but also I love when the birds start coming back and singing in the mornings, and that just brings me joy in my heart.
Well, I do want to bring up one thing, because we're talking about what is compassion, and I just feel like there's a lot of people doing quiet things out there. And while I like to interview people that are doing big, loud things also, I also have a heart to try to get at some of the quiet, hidden stories. And I feel like that's kind of what I want to do today. And I feel like, interviewing my own sister and what you do, you're kind of like the quiet force behind the scenes sometimes, and that's where you're comfortable. But I'm asking you today to kind of come out into the light a little bit, to shine this gift of compassion that you have. And it's unusual in some ways when you look at it in today's world. I don't know, looking at some things recently on social media, I feel like the world's kind of become violent is what I'm seeing. Maybe we're just seeing it more, but there was a little video I saw of someone running a relay. And, you and I were both in track. We both ran a relay in high school.
Right.
We have to pass the baton to the next person. And this was actually something that really happened recently. And one of the relay persons who was behind the person in front of her on a different team whacked her on the head, and she suffered a concussion. Yeah. And I just, I think because I was in track and I could imagine that happening, I couldn't imagine that happening back in the day when we were in track. And my response to that was, our world is becoming more violent. So, in light of that, the contrast to that is compassion, is kindness, is empathy. And so I want to highlight that today. And one of the illustrations that I have, like, to give people an idea, instead of saying, Camille, how are you compassionate? It's kind of hard to talk about yourself in those terms. So I want to kind of lead with something that my husband actually was the one who pointed it out. He said one time, Camille has the best hugs. And I knew that, and I think our dad was kind of like that too. I feel like he had some big, nice bear hugs. But you really are very intentional with your hug. And I was actually talking to some people recently about this, because I was talking about the fact that I was going to interview you. And so it led to this conversation about hugs. And it's not just a hug. It's like there's so much in that hug. And I'm sure you haven't analyzed your hugs maybe, but I'm just trying to give people an idea of like, how is compassion manifest? Like, what is the visual? How can we understand what that looks like instead of just a word, right? So, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, or like if that's intentional on your part. I'd like to hear your thoughts about your hugs if you have any. Like, there's something there. What is that? What is it that makes you not just see a hug as just like a formality, but a communication of love?
I'm thinking about growing up, and I feel like our family was just a hugging family to start with. That's just how we grew up, and we would always hug each other or, our relatives when we went to visit. I think it wasn't until I met my husband's family that I realized not every family is really a hugging family. And and I would hug them, and they liked it, but to them it was kind of unusual. I think it wasn't until you told me about Troy's comment about my hugs that I really thought about them. I don't know that before that it had been intentional, but typically with the people I work with, even now, I will leave with a hug before I leave their home. And so I guess maybe that is a bit of a signature of mine, but I'm not sure where it started, but I think we grew up that way in some points. Yeah.
Oh, this is so interesting because yesterday I was in Thief River Falls doing a young author conference presentation with other authors and creative people. And so we were talking to 5th to 8th graders. So anyway, I'm just kind of painting the picture. So then on the way back, a couple years ago, I've been doing this for probably almost 20 years. And I discovered going on a different route that halfway through my route home, I passed through a town of Ada, Minnesota, which is where our dad's cousin lives. She's the daughter of our dad's mom's brother, Emmett. And she connected with me. I knew about her, but I didn't know her until Dad died. And I wrote a column about our dad dying. It was my first faith column that I wrote. And she saw it in the paper and ended up reaching out. And that's how I've connected with her. And we're close enough, she has to come to Fargo every once in a while, that we're able to see each other. And she has shared so much about our dad's life growing up, and how her mom, who was our grandma Mary's sister-in-law, were so close. They were like sisters-in-law, but they were like best friends. And so she knew our dad's family quite well. And so I've gotten to like learn about him through his cousin. So anyway, on the way back yesterday, we stopped in Ada and met with Kay and Denny, her husband. And Nick, my son was along, and he's 19, and he's met them one time before, but he didn't really know them. So I was like kind of trying to explain who they were. Anyway, skip over to the point here. By the time we were leaving, they were like giving hugs, saying, "I love you" to him and to me. And what you said just now completely, it makes so much sense because I just experienced it like less than 24 hours ago. So it's so cool. I just felt like there was such warmth there and just and love. And it's like, no, Nick has never really met these people that he remembers, right? He doesn't know who they are. And yet there they are, just like treating him like they've known him their whole life. And it's because of those relationships. And so I don't know, I bring this up because it just resonates with what you're saying. And I think relationship, right? We can have not talked to someone like Kay and Denny hadn't Nick for years and barely then. And yet there's love there. And it's just so beautiful. It just left me, I don't know, I think it lifted both of our hearts as we were driving away. So, and I love that you said you hug your clients because, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. I want to hear more about what you do, but hugging isn't encouraged these days. I think of our mom and her teaching profession, and it's gotten to be like where teachers really can't even, be physical as far as giving their kids a hug. And I remember one time we went back to Montana, Mom and I, and she walked in and the kids just swarmed her because she'd been retired for a couple of years, but a lot of the kids still remembered her. And I thought, well, there goes the politically correct way of going about it. I mean, what's she supposed to do when these kids are,
coming
hugging
toward her.
her.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it too, maybe, Camille, as we reflect back on our childhood. There were kids that maybe needed a hug, would you say?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, even, I have just recently helped mom with a memory book. And one thing she said she liked to do in the classroom was read, because many of the kids didn't have anybody at home that would read to them. So I think in the same way, hugs probably weren't given out many times to a lot of the kids that she was with, or that were where we grew up.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, there's just, it was on the reservation. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of struggles, and so yeah, sometimes those things are lacking in those situations. And I think my mom was a warm maternal presence, our mom, actually, in the midst of that. And it's not to say that those kids weren't loved by their own parents. I'm not saying that, but
Right.
The physical affection is important. And I think we have to kind of assess that as we're going about our world. I still will do hugs. I maybe don't have like the full on bear hug like you do, Camille, but I think my hug's pretty good. Like I will definitely respond to your hug and with force. Go ahead.
Truthfully, there are some people where I've learned I can't hug that hard. One of my daughters is one of those, but
right.
They just feel it's too it's not gentle enough, I guess. So I do have to change that at times. But.
There's a hug sensitivity, and we do have to be mindful of that. We can't just come like a bulldozer, Yeah. So now I know we're going a little off my script here, but I think it's worthy. I think it's just there's more here than, like I said, just a hug. It's communicating something very beautiful, and it's communicating the heart. The heart is what motivates and moves us, but there's a manifestations of that and how we respond to people. And, we're made for relationship. And I think relationships are getting really strained, and there's a lot of isolation, which just grieves me. Just talking about it, I feel like I want to cry, because I feel like even the kids I talked to yesterday, I feel like there's such a disconnect with, and I don't want to be down on communications and technology, because we need those things, but I think we're blessed, Camille, to have been growing up in a time where we weren't completely dependent on that. And we had to search outside and find each other in different ways that weren't over a computer screen or whatever, there's something much more personal. It comes back to the hugs. It comes back to that personal context. So, so I thought of a memory that I don't, it's just funny what you remember, but I remember as we were going through high school together, we were only a grade apart.
Right.
And so you had taken your SAT and you had a high score, higher than mine, a year later. But, and I remember the guidance counselor, and I remember who she was. And I remember, I don't know how, like, you must have just shared this, but she thought that your aspirations weren't matching what your capabilities were. And so she was kind of nudging you to, like, maybe have higher dreams than being a teacher, which is something you had written, on some aptitude test results or something. I don't know if you remember that or not, but like it struck me, even then. And I remembered it all these years. Like, you could have been a rocket scientist. I don't know.
I doubt it.
But you chose teaching. So tell me about that. Why teaching? Obviously, we had our parents, but it has to be more than that. Like, you can't just do it because your parents did it. So what is it about that you zeroed in on kids?
Well, I mean, I think it is partly because of that our parents were teachers. But I was thinking, how far back? I don't have a memory like you do. I don't remember things way back into my childhood, but we did have these school days books, if you remember, that we would fill out each year about, how much we weighed, or who our best friends were, or what we wanted to be when we grew up. And so I pulled mine out the other day, and in kindergarten, I wanted to be a Girl Scout. But then by first grade, I wanted to be a Girl Scout and a teacher. So apparently from first grade is where I first got that notion. And then from then on, I think that kind of was my goal. I do think it partly is because of our parents, because when Chris and I took our kids when they were young to visit a married couple of ours, we went to visit them, and this couple, they are both nurses. And when we went to their house and the kids were playing together, well, the things that they had to play with were, medical equipment and, like a doctor kit and whatever.
Yeah,
So
I don't remember playing doctor. I don't think
no,
we did that.
I don't think so either. But I just
No.
thought that was kind of funny how, what you see and what you experience and the things are sometimes what pulls you to a certain area or another. But even as we grew, we would help mom in the classroom. Might remember helping her grade papers, or we might be decorating something for a bulletin board, or cutting things out for her. I think I enjoyed all of that type of thing. And so it just helped me continue to want to be in that profession. And then for some reason, it seems like kids seem to trust me. I don't know why, but even ones I don't know well, will come up to me and, they'll interact with me. And sometimes I kind of wonder, like you mentioned, the new protocol of stranger danger and things. Sometimes I think, well, I would understand if they didn't talk to me because, they're being careful. But I don't know if I release some kind of pheromone or something that tells them that they can trust me. But even just yesterday, I was getting mail for somebody out of their mailbox on the curb. And this little boy across the street was on his bicycle on a nice spring day. And he started talking to me. And I didn't understand all he was saying. He was probably 4 years old. But I just thought, see, even from across the street, kids seem to be able to, they seem to think they can trust me, and which I'm happy about. But so maybe there's something natural about it to me.
Well, and I would say I maybe helped you cultivate that.
That's true. That is true.
I was very dependent on my older sister. I was very shy, believe it or not, very shy. I remember people saying, "Oh, you're so shy," and I'm like, "Don't talk to me. Like, why are you looking at me?" I don't know. I think you weren't exactly super out there either.
No.
But you were my right arm. I remember some things, like I remember one time you had gone to this like library program or something at downtown, and then the next year I was going to get to go, and I was so excited, but I didn't realize you weren't going to be there with me. I was horrified that my mom was taking me, and maybe you were in school by then. I don't know, but I couldn't believe it. Like, okay, I don't want to be here without my sister, and so it's just an early memory of kind of panicking. So you were definitely a stronghold for me, and obviously I felt safe with you. There's another story. I know I've shared this before with you, but we were in Head Start. Our parents were teachers, and that was kind of a daycare program that they were able to put us in early on. Later, we had a babysitter, but in those first years, we were young and probably like 3 and 4. But you were in the 4-year class, and I was in the 3-year class. Super shy. I hardly talked to anyone. But you were I just remember whenever I would see you, it was relief, and this one time after Head Start, it was spring. We love spring. I love spring. I saw a dandelion. And at the time I just thought it was beautiful. And I was, checking out this dandelion. And all of a sudden I realized the bus was leaving. It was going down the road. It was a gravel road, and I could see the dust kicking up, and I panicked and started running towards the bus. I thought I was being abandoned. And the bus, I don't know if you knew that I was gone and you stopped it. I don't know, but the bus stopped, and I ran into the bus, and the daycare, the people that were our preschool teachers ushered you to the front of the bus so that you could greet me. And I just ran into your arms. I mean, I'm thinking of this 3 and 4-year-old, but I have that memory of, okay, I'm safe now. I'm safe. And, it's interesting because our friend from high school, Terrence Gorno, I'm on Facebook with him, and he has 2 little grandkids, 2 little granddaughters. They're just so cute, and they remind me of you and I. And the other day, he posted a video of them like rejoining at the end of the day, and he just said that no matter what, they always like want to hug each other, and it was just so cute. And I was like, that reminds me of me and Camille. And so, let's move on here before because I could probably talk to you about our childhood like for 3 hours. Yes, but tell me about. So you were in the teaching profession, and just share a little bit about that, like what exactly you did in the teaching profession. Also, like your husband's a teacher, our parents are teachers. Kay, that I talked about yesterday, was a teacher. We do have a lot of teachers in our family, so that for some reason, maybe it's a genetic thing too. But tell me a little bit about your teaching days, and then why you left.
Okay. Well, I started out. Well, I should go back a little bit further because I graduated in December of a year, which was kind of nice because I got to student teach in the fall. So I got to see how a classroom started and the beginnings of all that. But that meant I was done with college at the end of December. So I sort of had a half of a year there. That it's kind of hard to get a teaching job. So I worked in the library of a school for that little part of the last part of the school year. And then I got married after that. I taught in a country school for a year. I had 10 students in 5 different grades, I think.
Yeah, in Flasher, North Dakota?
Yeah, Flasher.
Yeah.
And then the next year I went into the school in Flasher, and I was a 6th grade teacher. And then Chris actually got a job in Hazen, so we moved from there. I taught in preschool for 1 year, and then our children started coming along. So wanting to stay home with them, I did some subbing then from that point on, about 15 years probably, before a teaching position came up again. And Chris encouraged me to do that. And it was a part-time music job in the elementary school here. So that's...
Which is perfect because you have a double major in education and music, right?
Right. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And your husband is a music teacher.
He is.
Yeah. Somehow it comes back to that music and education. Like it's just been a part of our lives forever. You know, I mean, even thinking about that, I'm sidetracking here, but like Dad playing Ella Fitzgerald records, like yes, it was records, or Mom like playing her stuff from the 60s, you know, while we were cleaning or whatever, she'd turn on the stereo. We're really dating ourselves here, but that's what it was actual records before they were called vinyl. And that's what we did. So anyway, music. And so now go back, keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think you asked about why I got out of the teaching profession, and really my music job was just a part-time job. And you probably know some teachers, but a part-time job is really a full-time job. I mean, teaching, you're not finished. You know, you're not in at 8:00 and out at 4:00. If you're a full-time teacher, there's work to do outside of the classroom, and you know, you're constantly thinking about how you can teach something differently to your students, or it takes a lot of time. And so, even though I was part-time, the workload still felt like too much for me, and to enjoy my family, and you know, some of the pressures of that work, I just knew I needed to be somewhere else. So that's when I looked in other areas.
I do know some teachers. I have a daughter, as you
true.
know.
Sorry, I wasn't thinking about that.
No. What's crazy is she's struggling with that because of the same things you said. There's something she loves the kids and everything, but first of all, teaching has gotten a little bit more complex, I think, these days, and there's different demands than there used to be. I think it was always hard. Like we know from our mom, like there were things, but we know from our mom, like what it took. Like we lived near school and she pretty much lived there. I mean, and we kind of lived there with her. Right. So, so we knew, and it's all consuming. It really is. And our daughter's kind of struggling with that right now too. Like she really doesn't feel like she has a balanced life, and she's really wondering, like, can I do this forever? 5 years in, and she started during COVID, which is
Very
So
hard
hard,
time.
so hard.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I know the demands, hearing from her because she calls me every day. She has a little bit of a commute and I hear about it all the time and I can understand. So, but how did you okay, so you're going to go in a different direction. How did
hmm
you discern the path ahead? Like, what did that look like?
Well, first I put together a list of maybe possible things that I would like to do. And my list had several items, but the top one was what I considered an impractical and unreachable thing. And that was to help older people in their homes. And then I had, a lot of other things that I thought were more practical and probably what I would be doing instead. But as I shared my list with my husband, for some reason, he told some other people, some of his colleagues, that, this was something I was thinking about. And the comments that came back were very much in favor. People saying, wow, that is really needed. Camille would be wonderful at that. The doors just started opening. So this thing that I thought certainly was not going to be the thing that I would start doing started to become a reality. And so that's where things began, I guess.
We're going to go on a break in a little bit, but before that, so what is exactly the business that you do and how long have you been doing it? And just share a little bit about it.
Okay. I have a senior companion care business. I provide services for seniors in my community. And so it's called Bluebird Companion Care. I am finishing my 9th year now, and I still love it.
That's so awesome. I know at times when I've explained it to some people, actually I have a friend who has here in Fargo that has a friend who's interested in something like this. So I told her about your website and stuff. So, so interestingly, because I haven't heard a lot about this, one distinction is it's not medical, right? It's truly just companionship. But I know that when you were first starting, one of the things that struck me about it was there was someone you went into their house and they were musical and you ended up playing the flute while they played the piano or whatever. And I just love that because just to think of again, that music education, compassion component all coming together. What are some of the other things that you do for your clients?
I provide personal care, so I might be helping with the shower. I can do house cleaning, just spending time, visiting with somebody. There are a lot of people that don't like to or can't run errands anymore, and so I will do that for them. Sometimes taking somebody to an appointment, sorting through their mail, or helping them pay bills. Just a variety of things, which is one reason it makes it kind of fun too, because each day is a little different. Even if I'm seeing the same person I did last week, something might be different about it.
Something you said of the list that you just gave me really struck me, and that is just visiting. And we talked earlier about isolation.
Yeah.
I think being in the presence of someone, being there, being next to them, asking them questions, hearing about their life, sharing some stories from your life. Again, I come back to that isolation piece that is sort of encroaching on our humanity. We were made for these kinds of things, and we're getting so far from that. So it's so beautiful, I think, and I can only imagine how blessed your clients feel to have Camille in their home. And yeah, some of it's just like the dirty work of, getting through life, but wow, we really become very vulnerable when we grow older. And that's the other thing. I think our culture kind of disregards and just forgets and kind of abandons the elderly. And I love that you can see through that and realize, no, there's something here. And I've been given these gifts and this is a way I can use them. So I'm going to pause here because on the other side of the break, I want to hear more about how the faith matters of soul importance. I want to know a little bit about your faith journey and how God kind of has intercepted into your life and how that all has worked. So we will be back after this break with more Matters of Soul Importance with my sister, my one and only sister, Camille Harvey. We'll be right back.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
Welcome back to Matters of Soul Importance. Roxanne Solonen here with my sister. I am so happy to have my sister on. I'm so glad she said yes to this. Camille, welcome back.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So right before the break, we were talking about, I did want to obviously bring faith into this, and I'm assuming there was a spiritual discernment process in changing careers and taking that leap of faith. My heavens, that's something that had to happen. You're going into the deep, you're going into uncharted territories. It's a whole new thing. And off of the teaching profession, which was so ingrained into us. So you're veering off the path, Camille, and you need some guidance. And I'm sure your husband was a help and other people, but still there's more. So I want to hear about your faith journey a little bit, like in terms of how this compassion was cultivated in that way. And you can go back as far as you want, but I want to kind of like bring us on that trajectory leading up to this point that you had to like jump into the water. Mm-hmm. So what are some memories of yours that kind of like jump out as to, God journeying with you and being your companion and even like helping fashion that compassion within you?
Well, I think we were a part of church, all of our growing up lives. So I don't have anything, a specific time I remember about God speaking to me as a child, except I do remember a group in our church, and I can't remember the name of them, but they were a passionate prayer group. And sometimes I would be helping watch some of their children while they were having a meeting. And I could hear, the prayer that they were lifting up to God, and it stirred something in me at that point. So I think for me, that seems like kind of a beginning of an awareness of God and just how vital that is in a person's life. I think through high school, I started thinking more about my own personal faith. I had a friend named Liz, who you remember, but she had some Christian music, which I did not even know that existed at the time. And so that was an amazing, eye-opening thing for me, especially liking music as much as I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there are just different people that God put in my life from there on, from campus ministry that I became involved in college, or a Bible study group. I was working at the YMCA as a counselor one summer, and the leaders in that group really helped me solidify my faith. I took a missions trip to Mississippi through college one spring break time, and that was very eye-opening as well, to be away from the area of the country that I grew up in. And then at some point, I made an intentional decision to follow Jesus. I'm not sure where the compassion comes in all of that. I guess just God growing that in me through my experiences and through other people, I would say.
I'm going to have you pause really quick because I'm curious about the mission trip. What happened there, and were there any moments that you remember kind of being lit up a little bit about reaching out in that way?
Yeah, probably. One thing that we did is we served food in a homeless shelter or in a soup kitchen kind of thing, and so that would have been a whole new experience to me. And so definitely that would have been an act of compassion, meeting these people that were in need and being there as a part of a group that could meet some of that need.
One of my thoughts here as I'm hearing about that is I have this thought coming to mind. Being compassionate is a risk. It's a risk. To go into uncharted territory, go on a mission trip, you don't know how you're going to be received. You don't know the people. And it can be scary because you don't know the reactions or whatever. Like you're in a different situation. It's maybe not as, comfortable as the situations you've been in before then.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of leads up to, this jump later, but I don't know if you have any other things to share along the way, but I think faith is it's a leap of faith, right? At some
Mm-hmm.
point we have to disregard any misgivings. And I think everyone that journeys on this faith journey at some point has to surrender our lives. And that is not a human thing. We can't do that like as human beings. Human beings are scrambling to survive and to rely on self, especially I think in our country, we tend to be really self-reliant. And as we're seeing, it doesn't work out so well when we isolate ourselves and try to do it on our own. Things don't always work out. They really rarely do. So there was something there. You were kind of putting yourself out inch by inch, right? Kind of having these new experiences. And at some point you came to realize like you needed that. You relied on faith, on God, like being with you. You weren't going to be doing this alone. So I don't know how that like awareness like developed and such, if that was ongoing during your teaching years, but definitely you're taking some big risks here.
And I think during the later teaching years, because I'd had time to grow as far as, marriage and family and growing in my faith, I think I looked at my last teaching position as a ministry. And I prayed that I would be, that I would do what God wanted me to do through that job. I looked at it probably in a different way than I looked at my first few teaching jobs, but I asked God to use me in that, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to be back teaching again. I think He did use me. And so I'm very grateful for that.
That's a really beautiful discovery when you realize, and I think it's something my husband is realizing more and more. He works in the plumbing and heating industry. He is a musician. He didn't set out to be in that sphere, although he did grow up in that industry also. But I think he was trying to get away from it. And he did own a guitar store for years. And we met in choir. So there's the music piece again. But the faith part, there were some years where he didn't really, his job was kind of demanding and hard. And there wasn't a lot of joy, I would say. But I think what he's tapped into, and it sounds like that was your awakening there, was you can be in almost any sphere and be a light in that sphere and to shine a light and bring hope and bring faith into it. So it sounds like I love that, like how you saw it as a ministry, because really, hopefully we're going to, all people of faith are going to see our careers as vocations also, because those are two different things. But I think God wants us to bring our faith into all the different spheres. And right now, with a more secularized society, I think we have a lot of opportunity. The mission field is great, right? So share how that grew in you and was like God's presence, and like sort of being able to lean on that gave you the confidence to do something crazy.
Well, and it wasn't totally crazy because God brings us into things little by little. So he doesn't just throw us in something. Usually there's some kind of a preparation period. And so, thinking back, I really think my relationship with our grandma, because I went to college in the town where she lived. So I did spend a lot of time with her on weekends or during the summers. And so that kind of fostered that care for older people, I think. And then when we moved to Hazen, we had a neighbor couple, an elderly couple who also was part of our church. But I began to help with things with them. And at one point, we had a Sunday school challenge that we could reach out to others. And so I prayed about what I should do. And my kids were young at that time, but I felt like I should take them to visit some older people. And so we went to a senior retirement center, and we started going weekly to visit with a couple of the men there who didn't have family around. And then also I started leading a women's Bible study at that same care center eventually. And all of those things were happening when my kids were growing up. So, I already was involved in the lives of some of the older people in our community. And so I knew I liked being around them, and I knew I liked hearing the stories of their lives. And so in that way, it wasn't totally a crazy out there thing, but God was preparing me for what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's, as you're talking to, I'm thinking about the vulnerability of children and the vulnerability of elderly people. And there really is a tie in there. And I love how you brought those two together, and it provoked a memory of when Mom used to take us to the nursing home in Poplar. We'd play bingo with them. I remember their shriveled up hands. I remember this one who, she would win a lot, and she always, there was different things you could, and she wanted the pack of cigarettes, which I don't think
they offer anymore.
No. But there's just certain memories. She had to have her Winstons. I think the Winstons were on the board for things for her in particular. But anyway,
then we had a babysitter that would take us to the nursing home too. Maybe that's what you were going to say.
Yeah. And so, it's interesting that you came back to that, but that was something really from childhood too. But I remember too being scared, like going into the nursing home. I don't think I would have wanted to do that willingly. It wasn't like, oh, we get to go to the nursing home and talk to old people that are moaning and whatever as you're going down the hall. It's kind of scary, but we're all going to be there someday, and obviously it takes us a while to get there. But once we do, it's like we're going to be vulnerable. We're all going to die. I saw something the other day, a Facebook friend challenging some young guy that's discovered and believes that AI is going to propel us into a place of where we won't ever die. And, it's just like the sooner we realize that we are going to, but there's that vulnerability, right? And that's what this young person didn't want to. He doesn't want to think about that. But sadly, if we don't, we're kind of missing the point. I don't know. I'm kind of going off on a different direction here about faith, but the point is we will die, and we are going to get old and vulnerable. I'm just putting that out there. And so how do we want to approach those years, and how do we want to approach others that are in those years? And it's almost like you want to be treated well. You want someone to come and visit you. You want to know that if you need help getting your groceries or getting a shower, that someone will be kind to you. I have a dear friend who was a priest and a mentor in college, and he was older. He was like almost retired. And when I knew him, and then he went up to the Red Lake Reservation, and that was his last assignment. He was just loved the people up there and was buried up there. And, but I went and visited him in Bemidji, where he was in a retirement home. And I just thought he was like the closest thing to Jesus I'd ever met. And he was so wise and had such a beautiful heart, and just was always like, I remember one time one of my daughters came, and she was like a teenager, and he just kind of just zeroed in on her, wanted to know about her life, what made her excited. He just was so caring. He always wanted to remember, now, how do I know you? If he couldn't remember. But anyway, he wasn't treated the best. I got a sense that some of the people who were caring for him weren't treating him really as respectfully as I thought he deserved. And it just broke my heart, because I thought, here's this guy who pretty much, changed my life. And now here he is, and people have no idea what a beautiful soul he is, and how much he deserves to be cared for. So I just bring that up because I think it's something we need to think about and reflect on, and realize we're all going to be there. So how are we going to, be treated? And I'm sure, I don't even know if you have that awareness, but there's that compassion piece, right? Compassion comes from God, right? Because he loved us first. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the compassion piece yourself, and how that has fed you and delighted you.
Well, going back to what you were saying about the priest that you knew and not being treated as well as you thought, I think it really has to do with getting to know a person. If I'm working with somebody, I don't know them quite well yet, but as we visit and as I learn about their life, I think there's just more compassion that comes because I understand them more. I get a feeling where they came from, and so that's hard when we see that is not being shared with people. But I think the more we get to know people, the more that compassion can come out.
This pairing of young people with the elderly is something that just really seems needed, you know? I just think the elderly, well, for one thing, I think of some of my own kids' struggles and in their peer relationships, and how, you know, kids as they're growing are comparing themselves. They're trying to match to everyone else. And I think there's something about elderly people who have this wisdom of life, which I think is so important in this world. And if we could somehow, it's a safe place for young people too. And it would be great if we could. I'm sure there are ministries and things, but it's just something that's occurring to me that we need to be more diligent about pairing young people and older people because they have so much to offer each other. I think the older people would have that wisdom and love and just having gotten through things, and then the young people can bring life and hope, you know? So I don't know. I'm completely going off on this crazy tangent, Camille, but just, I knew that your story would stir some of these thoughts. And that's kind of why I wanted to probe a little bit. Cause I've known like, okay, Camille does this. And I was thinking been about 10 years. I remember when we talked about it, when I had kind of started a freelance business and you were starting your thing. And, but I never really probed. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. What are some other things that you've learned from the elderly? I love how you said sometimes you just have to get to know people, and maybe they're, you know, from the outside we're like, oh, they're kind of old and shriveled up. I mean, I'm just going to say it, but we're all going to be there, and not to give them the time of the day. But there's such a richness there. We shouldn't discount it, because maybe that's the key. You know, maybe that's the key to bring back our world that seems to be sort of hurling in a direction that's kind of scary. You know, maybe we need to reconnect with one another.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that is very important.
Do you feel that there's a lack of compassion in the world? Like, I've kind of described some things. Are you seeing that too? And what is your response to that?
Well, I think you did kind of mention earlier too about, you know, is it that there's more lack of compassion, or is it just that we see it more because of technology and being connected more, you know?
Yeah.
It's more out there perhaps. So I think, I know there's probably always been some of that, maybe just not noticed as much, but I really feel like when we put on the eyes of God to look at other people and to see other people, that is where our compassion is coming from. I was thinking about some books I had read in the last couple of years, and I don't know why I ended up reading all of these in the same few months, but they were about an American soldier that had, he was a prisoner of war, a Korean Christian who was put in a prison, and a Jewish young lady in a concentration camp. And it seemed like in all of those situations, the people were either given a name, I'm sorry, not a name, but a number, a label, you know, called names. And then once that part came about, it just was easier for everybody else to start doing things to them that were very degrading and just evil. So I think just the way we talk about each other, or even in our minds, you know, like, this person is a child of God. If I'm thinking and remembering that this is God's creation, then I'm not as likely to be acting in a harsh way to somebody else. So putting on the eyes of God, seeing people through his eyes.
Absolutely. I try to do that. I'm sure I'm not perfect in it, but for example, when we've done our sidewalk ministry at the abortion facility, and back when it was in Fargo downtown, I feel like I had a heart for the homeless and the drifters out down there, because they they had such wisdom, and I do think part of it is growing up where we grew up, because we did see some of that, and yet I could see their humanity. I knew I wasn't better than them, and then I learned from them. Like, they had such wise things to say, and because they didn't have as much material things to blind them, there's just this beautiful wisdom where God speaks through the vulnerable. Like, wherever you're talking about vulnerable, God can speak through children. I remember my own children. Like, there's certain moments where I just felt heavy laden, and like, one of them would come to me in a moment and just like soothe my heart, and like I just felt it like it was God, you know. So I think just like that awareness, and that, again, coming back to how do we want to be treated, you know? So I'm curious too about some of your role models. You've mentioned a few people that have inspired you in terms of like compassion. Are there any others that you could name that have helped teach this to you, other than Jesus himself, who gives us a lot of examples? I mean, that was why he came, was to bring us back, call our attention to the heart, right? To love. And so, but what are there any other role models, would you say?
I mean, we talked about Dad a little bit, and even something so small as holding doors. He would always, tell us to hold the door for an older person behind us. And he had stories too of his time in the Air Force, and just his dislike of segregation. I don't know if you remember some of those stories, but I think that's probably where it started. I had a friend, Val, in school, and I remember one time somebody saying about her that she's kind to everyone, that she never said a bad thing about anybody. And after I heard that, and I thought about it, and it was true of her, but then I started wondering, am I like that? Am I kind to everybody? So that's probably, she would be another role model, even though she didn't know it.
I think of Mom too. And it was a quieter kind of a thing, but just how kids were drawn to her, and she probably went overboard in what society would say is okay, as far as like inviting. Well, you probably remember this. Like this was totally okay. But every year she would have a group. Well, several groups, I guess. I think they came in different groups, would come over and have dinner at our house. And that was so special. And then she would like bring everyone home, and it was really exciting when our own class were the ones that came to our house. But she did have this abundance of compassion, and I think maybe that came from her own struggles early on of struggling to learn and read. That was one of her struggles, and so she turned that into like compassion towards others who had struggles. And I know, like, I've probably mentioned this, like, there were times where I felt jealous that, like, she loved her students so much, but you know what? She loved us a lot too. Like, I never felt lack of love, but her students were very special. Like, she had a lot of compassion, and yet she had discipline also. It was a good match. So yeah, we were very blessed with good role models, even just in our family and our friends. I love thinking about people like Liz. I did a clarinet solo with her. You brought her up earlier, and then Val. She is very kind, and it's just, yeah. So we want to model that for others, right? And it's a joy to do so. It is a joy to practice compassion, and yeah. So, what about your grandkids? I know that they bring you joy, and yes, I'm envious because I've always followed your path until now. I can't produce grandchildren on my own. So I will wait patiently. But in the meantime, I get to enjoy your cute little kiddos that you get to help care for. And I'm sure you're instilling compassion in them just through who you are, Camille. But what are they giving to you? Maybe they're sharing, maybe they're teaching you some compassion. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing through your time with them?
Well, of course, a brother and sister, or a sister and sister, don't always treat each other the nicest. But when you do see those instances of sharing, even sharing a play toy or being concerned when the other one is hurt, or helping with a task or giving a hug. Those are really special moments to see. So that's just a beautiful, heartwarming glimpse of God through my grandchildren and children in general. I love watching them as they grow, how they see the world through a fresh set of eyes and the insights they have, things that we are used to experiencing is new to them. And so the way they express what they are seeing is so fun to witness. But I should go back to a little bit. You talked about dying and not living forever. And that is my 5-year-old grandson's kind of latest thing. He's concerned about, me growing old, or will I still wear glasses, or will I, or he'll say he doesn't want to die because there are no toys in heaven. I'm not sure how to answer that, but I told him God has wonderful things in heaven. So, but yeah, some of those little conversations that come up throughout the day are pretty precious, So looking for teachable moments, even though I'm not teaching in a classroom, I still feel I have that influence through my grandchildren. So I'm grateful that they live nearby.
Yeah, that's such a blessing in the world where we're so spread out and again, not always connected. Well, kind of starting to close things out, I've really loved this conversation. How would you encourage people, like people that are listening? Like, I just think we can all be more mindful of pursuing a life of compassion. And I think as Christians, we're compelled to that, and we're all works in progress. I understand there's situations that really challenge us, but what would your kind of tips be, Camille, on how we can? I think the whole conversation has led to ideas about that. But if you could kind of name some things that could be helpful, what would you say?
Sure. I think, we've talked about seeing people through God's eyes, but I think probably the thing that we need to start with is just asking God to show us a need, asking Him to put a person in our lives that we can reach out to. So that might be a daily asking thing or whatever, but ask God. He has somebody in mind. I think you've said it a few times here, but it's true that we need each other. And we're made for each other, we're made to help each other. And so God has somebody that needs the special gifts that you have. And so ask Him about that, and then take the steps, to get together with that person or meet the need. And I just feel like once you've done that and experienced the joy and satisfaction from that and have seen God work through that little small act, you'll just want to do it again. It's such a good feeling and such, I don't know, it is fulfilling because you know that you're meeting a need that God placed in somebody and you're the one that can help fill that. It's very gratifying.
I will add that when you ask God for such intentional things, be prepared. He will respond. He will respond because He doesn't waste a willing heart. And obviously not everyone is maybe there at the same place of being ready for that. And, maybe some people are still healing through things or whatever. And so, but I think everyone can cultivate this and draw from it, everyone. But yeah, he will show up if your prayer is intentional. He is ready, and he just wants to connect us to each other, I think. And we're getting away from that. So I love this. This is like going to be one of my favorite podcasts, I think, Camille. It really is touching my heart. And I just thank you for sharing from your heart. And as you're describing like how good it feels, I think it's because we come from a loving God with a huge heart, and Jesus came to teach us how to love, and that's the whole reason we're here. Why else are we here? Just to die and become, soil someday? I don't think so. Like there's something bigger, and this very need and desire to love and to receive love, because it's reciprocal, right? Is part of how we know that there's something more. Love is eternal. Love is forever, and it never dies. And we don't actually ever die either. Our soul lives on, and so we have a chance. This is an opportunity. Our life is an opportunity to cultivate love, to cultivate compassion. So I just thank you. Kind of a funny question here at the end, Camille. How do you spell compassion?
COMPASSION.
You would have done great in a spelling bee. I am a spelling bee champion of Roosevelt County, I will have to say. But Camille, you are a communicator in your own right, a beautiful writer in your own right. You're also like a really good editor, as I've learned through the years. You've helped me through lots of different projects, and I appreciate that so much. But I just want to thank you so much for being with me today and being with everyone who's going to be listening to this. I think they're going to be blessed. Is there anything else you want to shout out there about compassion, or any final thoughts before we have to say goodbye?
I don't think so, but I just appreciate you having me here. I've listened to your podcasts and have so enjoyed all the guests. I didn't think I was maybe that caliber, but thank you for the honor anyway.
I think this is going to be a great episode. So I'm excited to share it, and keep loving those in your life. Keep finding ways to connect with them, because like we've both said, we're made for each other, Camille. And I'm so grateful that you're my sister. And I've been very blessed by that. So thank you for all your compassion that you've had towards me through the years.
I'm grateful to you too. And I look forward to seeing you before very long.
That sounds good. We'll have a nice weekend together. So thanks for bringing Mom this way, and love you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. I love you too.
Okay. Yep. Bye-bye, Camille.
Bye.
So how do you spell compassion? Obviously, Camille knew how to spell it, like she knew how to spell Mississippi all those years ago. M-I, crooked letter, I, crooked letter, I, humpback, I. I really enjoy talking with my big sister, and I hope her big heart came through to you as it did to me. The first time I can recall really contemplating this word, compassion, happened at a fundraising event for the St. Gianna Maternity Home, now named St. Gianna and Pietro Mola Maternity Home, in 2014. The keynote at that event, Monsignor Thomas Richter, the guest of my April 20 episode a few months back, brought the word to a new level, defining the word from its Latin origins. As I wrote in a follow-up piece, he noted that compassion derives from the Latin words cum, or with, and pati, or to suffer. So the word compassion literally means to suffer with. Monsignor talked then about how the home's founder, Mary Pat Johnner, left a beloved teaching job more than a decade earlier to suffer with the girls and women who would enter the maternity home. In that time, over 80 babies had come into the world who might not be here otherwise, and over 80 mothers had been transformed. It takes a great soul to understand there are no easy fixes, he said, adding that it is harder to suffer with and easier to have false compassion, the cultural version of compassion, which says, I see your pain, but I really don't want to be at the cross with you. Compassion doesn't mean to take away the problem, but to offer true compassion by suffering with. It seems to me this is what Camille has decided to do. Inspired by Christ's love for her and the gifts he's developed in her soul, she's chosen the harder route, meeting the suffering people in her midst and accompanying them through the hard things, as well as the joys. It hit home for me when she described talking to her clients and getting to know about them, not just seeing them as an old person with nothing to contribute, but a treasure trove of experience and wisdom with dignity that culture rarely affords them. And I appreciate her suggestion in pondering where we might apply our compassion to start by simply asking God, where do you see a need, Lord, that you've qualified me to fill? Camille didn't get complicated with her advice. This is something we can all do. of course, following through is where the rubber meets the road. But I have a feeling that if we do follow through, God will bless us. He always does when we're open to his promptings. It's been a while since I've asked, but I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at roxannebsolonin@gmail.com. I'll include that in the show notes today to share your favorite Matters of Soul Importance podcast so far and why. Well, that's it for today, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode diving deeply into a topic of both earthly and eternal consequence. And until then, don't lose sight of the light.